Tyler King alongside Evan Cook getting you set for the first of two huge home games for the Fort McMurray Oil Barons to cap off the 2014-15 regular season. A Friday night affair with the Lloydminster Bobcats, a team the Barons haven't played in quite some time. But Evan, top of mind right now is probably a road trip for the Barons that started off pretty darn well with some big wins in Grand Prairie and a huge comeback win in Whitecourt. A bit of a disappointment and a little bit of a slide for the Barons to have two very winnable games in Drayton Valley where they just don't come out on the winning side.
Yeah, certainly winnable games for them over the weekend in Drayton Valley, but you know, like was talked about on that side of the road trip, their Barons did a lot of good things in those couple of games. You know, it really just came down to some really untimely goals given up, and you know, they just couldn't light the lamp maybe as often as they have at points in past years in Drayton Valley. So yeah, just a tough one there. It would have been fun if this little two-gamer was a battle for second place, which it's not now, but still things to play for both teams heading into this one.
Yeah, you talk about untimely goals in those games in Drayton Valley. Definitely game two of that series was probably typified that. Barons head into it in a tie game heading into the third. They outshoot Drayton Valley in the third and yet give up two, as you mentioned, untimely goals there, Evan. But as you mentioned as well, these aren't meaningless games for either of these teams right now. The Barons are out of contention for second place, but if they get a little bit of help from Bonnyville, who doesn't have the easiest schedule in the world ending this regular season, they've got a shot at third. And if they finish third, that sets up a much more reasonable second round if they can get past that best of five to start things off, probably against this very Lloydminster team, but you never know. Lloydminster, on the other hand, really wants to lock up second place. Bonnyville is, of course, in that mix and could finish a lot higher as well. So because the North Division is still as tight as it is, even though the Barons don't have the potential to get into second place, still an opportunity to make things a little bit easier as far as the long-term playoff run goes, because you'd probably be much happier facing a more tired Lloydminster or Bonnyville team in the next round of the playoffs than you would against a fully rested Spruce Grove who's going to finish first.
Yeah, it's very true, and like you mentioned, I mean, if the Barons are going to finish third here, they're going to need some luck a little bit. Bonnyville's kind of got to lose out their schedule. They've won 5 games in a row. They're the hottest team in the league right now. So there is that fact in the way of the Barons. But, you know, you're right. The thing about that fourth place finish is, you know, if Fort McMurray is able to make it on to the next round, but there aren't any other upsets, you've got that number 1 seed Spruce Grove Saints kind of looming in the future too. So for the Barons, obviously a big weekend. They've got to win both games here if they're going to move up a spot in the standings. You know, but you're right. Lloydminster can't get too passive either, because Bonnyville could easily catch them too. So exciting stuff going forward here, and going to be some exciting stuff lower in the division too between Sherwood Park and Drayton Valley to see which of those teams ends up meeting the mob in the first round.
Exactly. But as the Barons finish off this regular season, Evan, I think you'd agree both for this weekend and for the playoffs long term, and the Western Canada Cup, of course, coming up on the horizon, Barons who have struggled a little bit to score in the last little while are going to need some depth when it comes to the forward side. And that's why I think it's important we focus in on some of the players who maybe took a little bit of time to get acclimated to the AJHL, but are now among the Oil Barons scoring leaders in the months of January and February. One guy who was a big contributor in Drayton Valley and over the course of that entire road trip for the mob is a guy in a 3-game point streak right now in rookie forward Jackson McKinstry.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And, you know, thinking back to maybe earlier in the year and then watching those couple games in Drayton Valley on the weekend, he just looked a lot more comfortable, looked a lot more confident, you know, jumping into the play, getting into those tougher areas where, you know, he scored the one in the first game there. Was a nice little rush up the ice led by Brett McNeil, and McKinstry got open for a one-timer. And the other one, it was just him going hard to the net, picking up a loose puck. So nice to see him sort of come into his own. Barons, there are a couple, you know, lines that are starting to look pretty good when it comes to chemistry. Just, you know, that maybe burst of goals just hasn't come yet.
If you look at the Lloydminster side, I mean, they're always a tough nut to crack defensively with two very defensively minded coaches. You look, though, at what you have to go up against, even if you get through that back end. And it's a goaltender in Devin Green who set a new franchise record for this team in shutouts. And he's the kind of guy that is not easy to get past. And frankly, considering you're always limited in shots when you go up against Lloydminster, he's definitely someone to watch, Evan. I think as well, if you look at the forward side, the Bobcats might not score a lot, but a guy guy they got late in the season, sort of midway through, in Patrick Geary, has become quickly a point-a-game guy for them. And I think as well, as far as who the eyes of Oil Barons fans are going to be on, they might be a little bit behind the bench, where you see a former Oil Barons bench boss in Gord Thibodeau, who certainly had an effect on this Lloydminster team in his first year on this back with this bench staff that he used to be on.
Well, for sure, and starting with Green, obviously a veteran in Lloydminster. Think back to last year when he kind of got replaced at the start of the playoffs there by Christopher Tye. So, he's got a lot to prove, and he's done quite well this season. 7 shutouts, that leads the goaltenders. So Green's definitely a guy that can steal a period, steal a game for the Bobcats if need be. You mentioned Geary as well. Like you said, no huge scorers on this Lloydminster team, but like you mentioned, he's a guy that has put up a point per game process for Lloyd, and there's that depth there, that they can go out and get as many goals as they need to. They might not, score 5 or 6 goals every game.
No.
But they'll get those goals at the timely points that they need to be successful. And, like you mentioned, Gord Thibodeau, a stranger to nobody up here in Fort McMurray. It's going to be kind of fun for him to be back on the bench in this building, which he's been on a bench in this building for a long time in his coaching career. So it'll be fun for him, I'm sure, to be back up here.
Big set of games coming up this weekend. 2 teams with lots to play for. It's a Friday night puck drop to kick it off between the Oil Barons and the Lloydminster Bobcats, with all the action getting going right here at the Casman Center at 8 o'clock.